Thank you very much, Naomi. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here this afternoon. For a German mechanical engineer like me, interested in the history of innovation, steam turbines, steam engines, Manchester obviously has a very fascinating history. It's a great place where we heard this morning several times the revolution of the cotton industry has started, and many interesting things have happened here. So I think it's an obvious choice to talk about the next industrial revolution. A few words about Roland Berger. So my name, as Naomi said, is Jens Nackmayr. I'm a partner in our Roland Berger London office. And I enjoy working and living in the UK since 2010. So I had the pleasure to work quite a lot already here in the UK. Roland Berger himself, that's where we have the name from, founded the company exactly 50 years ago. So we are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. And with around about 2,400 people, we claim to be the largest consulting firm of European/German origin, which means we are not American. And I hope still after Brexit that's an interesting thing, because I truly believe there's a lot of culture parallels here that we can use. Being of German origin and working a lot in automotive and for companies in engineered products, Industry 4.0 is a very important topic for our customers and for us as well. So this is the reason why Roland Berger started actually quite early with publications on that topic. And if you're interested in more and what I tell you today, please go on our website and have a look. There's some interesting stuff there. So what do I want to bring across with my short presentation today? Being a consultant, of course, we are mainly hired to bring profitability and some value. So we see that Industry 4.0 can actually boost ROCE by 20 to 30%. And we talk about this a little bit later, obviously. I think it's also an opportunity to revitalize industrial production in the UK if the government, if the companies here take the opportunity. And thirdly, the good news is, and we heard it also before, you don't have to do it in a big bang. You can apply it in defined areas, but of course it has a bigger leverage if you apply it in an end-to-end approach. And end-to-end can actually be from the first steps in your value chain, but also integrating suppliers. So it becomes a very big topic then. So my presentation is then actually divided into 3 little chapters. Number 1, the new paradigm of manufacturing strategy. Then entering what I would call the post-deindustrialized era. And thirdly, being prepared. Let's talk about number 1. And the new paradigm, we discussed it over lunch. I mean, some people think Industry 4.0 means we all have to buy robots and do everything fully automated. I mean, that would cut out a lot of our customers, a lot of industries. We just simply don't have the volume to automate everything. So we take a little bit a different angle, and we still think it's a very important thing, because it can actually really impact your profitability and your return on capital employed. And in this slide, what we want to show actually is the impact on ROCE. And we think first and foremost it's about increasing utilization of your assets. And that can also mean your existing asset. It doesn't mean you have to invest a lot of money in new robots and new equipment. It's more connecting this and leveraging this with the technology. And we've just seen very real examples of technology that you can use to achieve this. So what you see in this chart is an isoquant, and if you move down to the right corner, you enter up in the area of low margin, low added value production with amortized and obsolete equipment. Not sure if this is an area you want to be, but we still see many factories which have this kind of setup. If you move into the other direction, you obviously spend a much more money. You go into the area of high value add, high margin, higher profitability, but again, it costs a lot of money. And what we see as a very tangible benefit from Industry 4.0 is actually move into another direction and really increase your return on capital employed. And we will see actually how to do that. So if we look at a usual value chain, and you can see it starts from sales and marketing, R&D and engineering, procurement, production, distribution, and up to in service. I mean, it's more a manufacturing value chain here. We added some of these enablers, digital enablers. And again, most of the speakers before me said quite a lot is already in place. So it's not all futuristic. But the good news is, A, a lot is already available. B, a lot of stuff that looks very futuristic will become mature and much cheaper and affordable in the short term. And so there's no reason actually not to start this journey. And we see actually a lot of activities in this area. But again, we see something from more a silo thinking. So very often companies start with a customer journey, for example, in automotive. Many of our clients started with a customer journey, but then it stops somewhere in the car shop at the dealer. Engineers love 3D simulation, everything, but then very often we see if you have 3D drawings and a digital mock-up, and you give it to your supplier, you then have to transfer it back to 2D drawings, and then where some of the problems start again. So we are still not quite there. So there are a lot of good, things that start, but it's, I think, far away from being integrated. If we look at it from a commercial perspective, what we've done is we simulated in a quite detailed financial model a typical tier 1 automotive supplier. To get a feeling, it's also one of our publications where we said, what's the financial impact of Industry 4.0? And what you can see here is at the front, on the top line, the impact on the EBIT, and the waterfall diagram shows the levers and the impact on the ROCE and ROCE. And in our model, it goes from 15% before Industry 4.0 to over 42% or over 40% in, let's say, if you've implemented what we can see right now. And again, some of the things we've seen, the virtual industrialization, what you just talked about, Guillaume, smart machine, predictive maintenance. So some of this is already available, but it's not a short-term thing. So, to be realistic here, to achieve this takes maybe 5 years or even more, because it actually depends on how quickly you can adjust your machine park and also your workforce, and at the same time ramp up this kind of connected system in your factory. Yeah, but the numbers, and I'm pleased to see that I saw similar numbers from other experiences. So this is very much in line with what we can see today. So when you go home and, I don't know, talk to your CEO or your CFO, probably you can say, we probably should thinking about boosting our ROCE by 20 to 30% in the next 5 years. And again, some concrete examples, and also we as Roland Berger, as a consulting firm, we are actually partnering up because we can't provide all this technology, and it wouldn't be our business model anyway. So we are actually partnering up with the best providers of these technologies, being it 3D simulation, machine tools, so what's required by the customer. And we've seen some examples. I mean, this is actually was much better actually visualized in your presentation. So it goes from 3D simulation, cobots, visual recognition of wear and preventive maintenance. So there are a lot of islands there that start to build a real connection between the customer, and never forget the customer, and a higher utilized supply chain. So we can definitely see it. I mean, we think that the potential of Industry 4.0 is probably, we are less than 10% probably what we actually tapped into the potential. So it's just the beginning. And we recently finished a project for a defense company where we worked on a single production line. And again, the result is that you can reduce the unit cost by around about 30%. And what the client did, he said, let's start with a pilot. Let's not do the big bang. And the success is there now, and then they will roll it out. So I think that's a fair approach that everybody can take and say, start small with what we can actually cover. So entering the next chapter in the post-deindustrialization era, I mean, when I look at, and I'm from Germany, but we all looked up to, when we look into the history books, around 1850, Britain was a workshop of the world's first modern industrialized nation. I mean, what we've seen since then is in all industrialized nations or countries, the share of GVA on industrial production has gone down. But what we see right now is in the UK, if we include energy, the share of industrial production on GVA is around about 14%, compared to Germany 26 or Japan 21. I mean, there are different numbers, but I think the range is more or less the same. And I think this is now kind of the turning point and the question, can you really go much lower and then still, compete? Or is that the lowest level and from here it has to go up again? So what we also did is, in the last study from last year, Roland Berger applied the same ROCE logic on countries. And what you see here are the developments over the last 15 years. It's from 2000, 2014. And I think it's quite interesting to see, again, you see the isoquants and you see different countries, and there's a lot of movement. So if you pick, for example, France, and many European countries actually went the wrong way. China, there's a lot of investment in China and in Asia. We come to this in a second. And I mean, actually, United Kingdom is in a pretty good position still, but according to our numbers, it's going slightly the wrong way. So the interesting question is actually indeed, how do you go from here? And which companies, and we talk about global companies, and which nations will actually benefit the most from these new technologies? And we discussed over lunch a little bit here in a group the industrial strategy for the UK. And if you look at what the Chinese are doing with their Made in China 2025 policy, I mean, to me, it's very impressive to see, to me, very clear vision, what they want to do, and they will spend a huge amount of money to get there. And I think we all feel that there's a pretty high likelihood that they will be successful. So the question is, what do the European countries want to do, what the UK wants to do? And when we look at what's happening right now, Asia has already taken the lead in intelligent automation, and in a few years' time, we think that in Asia will be 3 times more robots than in Europe. So 3 times more robots. I mean, we really have to find a way to catch up. And we think the only way actually in Europe to be successful and to have a chance is if we invest in this kind of high-end flexibility with the highly skilled people we have and smart machines. Yeah. Okay, so the way I say it, I think it sounds a little bit like, oh my God, this is probably the last chance we have here in Europe. But I really think it is also an opportunity, like a wake-up call, to use this now as a starting point. And but there are some critical rationales, and each country probably has different ones. But again, you have to decide if you want to be really the the spearhead of the whole movement, and you have to pick your battle probably. It requires definitely a lot of investment in people, in skills, in education, in infrastructure, in research and technology. Again, if you compare this on an international level, to my knowledge, the UK is rather on the bottom end here. So there's a lot countries have to do to catch up. And I also think when you come to the UK from Germany, and I worked in the Fraunhofer Institute and Academy of Science, so there's a lot of discussion around, technology push and from universities, and I think the politicians listen to this. And when I came to the UK and we had a breakfast meeting last year before Brexit, and I said, okay, we have to discuss the industrial strategy. One of my colleagues said, yeah, but in this country, the first question is still, do we need one? Yeah. So there's still also culturally a huge difference, and there are probably still people or many people in this room who think we let the market sort this out, so we don't let government not get involved in this. But I think also we work with ATI, the Aerospace Technology Institute, on high value design, and my feeling is you really have to start this dialogue also across regions. I mean, I also picked up it's a thing between London and the north and the southwest. So I mean, also in Germany, there's a lot of regional, power hubs. But I think you really have to talk. You really have to talk between each other and also cross industry, because there are now a lot of links. High value design is relevant for aerospace. It's the same for maritime or automotive. So I think it's really time to talk, but still come to a good conclusion, obviously. So finally, what has to happen to be prepared? And again, many of the people who talked before me mentioned the same thing. It all comes back to the same thing. So competencies and skill evolution. I mean, this starts from the top. We see some interesting changes on CTO level. So do you have the right CTO or the people who's responsible for your technology down to the people who operate the machines? So it's not just on the shop floor. I think it goes through the whole ranks of the management. Do we have the people who understand actually what's going on, who are aware of what's going on and see the opportunities and not just the threats? Labor flexibility. I think we will need some new kind of contracts. What's interesting is that even in my business, in my firm, we have now young consultants coming in and saying, I know I really love the job, but I would love to do actually a second job in parallel and work with a startup. Yeah, so you have people who now think, yeah, a job is interesting, but maybe I want to have two jobs, or I want to have different jobs. So it's not just that, flexibility is not wanted. I think it's also a question of generation. But it's definitely a demand from an industry perspective, but I think also a pull from the younger generation. We heard a lot about cybersecurity. Again, our clients tell us it's already very, very scary. There's a lot of cyber attacks happening, and I'm sure it will not go away. And also there are standards, norms required to make this all happen. So finally, this is what consultants I think very good at. They ask questions, or they encourage the companies or the people we work with to ask questions. And we think there are three key blocks of questions regarding Industry 4.0. The first one is actually, do you have a vision? Yeah, what's your vision? And maybe not a 10 years vision, but I think you should have a roadmap for 2021. And you should also ask yourself the question again, do I have the right people to develop this roadmap, to ask the right questions, to answer these questions? And then to make it more pragmatic, what are my key pain points right now? Is it my supply chain, or is it the flexibility of demand? What are the key things I could address with Industry 4.0 and new technology? And maybe also look a little bit 1 or 2 years ahead and see what kind of technology will be available when I'm ready, because it always takes a little bit of time to ramp up, get everything in place. So, you know, build out your future model maybe 1 or 2 years ahead and think about technology that you can't buy today, but maybe in 1 or 2 years. And finally, how to get it all started, how to initiate and manage my initiatives. And again, I'm a big believer in pilots, and just, you know, start something, show some early success, and convince people. And there will always people who say, "Oh, it doesn't work," or, you know, it's only a hype. It will go away. So again, we see. I'm not aware of any company who doesn't drive some kind of digitalization Industry 4.0 program. So I think it is definitely happening. So I think asking the right questions and trying to answer them as fully as possible is a good start to prepare and to actually start your journey. And to conclude, I mean, here this is our 50 years logo. When I studied mechanical engineering in the late 80s, early 90s in Berlin, my professor talked a lot about CIM, C-I-M, CIM for Computer Integrated Manufacturing. And it was actually very close to what we call Industry 4.0 now. But we didn't have the technical capabilities, the processor speed, the sensors were not there, the software wasn't there, it was all too slow, too expensive. But I think it's very exciting that 25 years later we talk about it now, and I think it will really going to happen. So thank you.